Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jumper and today I'll be reviewing The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages and Seasons. That was released for the Game Boy Color and it was made by Capcom and developed was developed by Capcom and published by Nintendo. So, as I said in the intro, these two games were made by Capcom and were published by Nintendo. And this is another Zelda game or two Zelda games that had like the whole Nintendo Capcom joint, I would say, partnership. I would say because Capcom has helped Nintendo make, I think, some other Zelda games in the past. I think um, after the Olga games were released, that being both Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures and the Minish Cap. And obviously the Oracle games are also made by this whole Capcom Nintendo partnership thing. And yeah, so these two games have very different plots. So but they kind of like connected in a way. So with Oracle of Seasons, Link is sent to the land of Holodrum, in which the Oracle of Seasons, Din, has been taken by Onox. I think he's a general, this like demon general called Onox, and in Oracle of Ages, Link is sent to the land of Labrena, in which the Oracle of Ages, Farore, I believe, it has been taken by the mage Valorin. I think that's the name of the main of one of the bosses in Seasons. I mean Ages, not Seasons. And because of these two oracles being taken, the both respective lands have been turned into chaos. So, for instance, in Oracle of Seasons, the seasons are in disarray; they are all out of control. And in Oracle of Ages, time itself begins to become a mess because Valorin went back in time and kind of messed with the past in a sort of sense, and it's up to Link to save both lands. Now, what I like about this is that this feels like a Pokemon type game in the sense that you've got these two games and they're kind of connected with each other. So, like, mainly because both the witches. Twin Rover. I'm just going to call them Twin Rover because I don't remember the names at this point. Or I don't remember now. Want to revive Ganon. And I think you have to like try and use both Oracle of Ages and Seasons to sort of like stop Twin Rover and then stop Ganon when he is revived. And I said this is like Pokemon in a sort of sense because if you want to complete a particular generation of Pokemon games, like Red or Blue, X and Y, Black and White, Sun and Moon, whichever games you're playing in terms of Pokemon, both, Red and Blue, both games from that particular generation can help you get all the Pokemon for particular Pokédex. And I think it's somewhat similar to the Oracle games. Now, what I like about these two games is that they're both set in two different lands. It's not the same land because I feel like that would have been. I think it would have been less interesting. I think the stakes wouldn't be as high if both Oracle of Ages and Seasons both had the same land. So I do really like the whole thing of having Holodrum in one game and Labrena in another game, and I think that's really interesting because you can like try and figure out, okay, I need to use, my time powers in order to go back in time and solve this problem. I need to use my seasons powers to do this sort of thing and fight these monsters and stuff like that. And also, these games are really well known for having their puzzle and adventure combat skills, depending on which game you're playing. I'll talk about this a bit in my gameplay section, but to basically just summarize, In the Oracle games, you have Oracle of Seasons being more on action, and the Oracle of Ages more on puzzle solving. So those two games are really interesting because you have you have to figure out which one you want to do, in terms of how you play through each game. Like I'll probably explain it in my gameplay review part or part of the review, and I'll probably explain it later on in the review. But that's really interesting, and yeah, and for its time for the Game Boy Color, it's it's fine. I do enjoy it. I think it's one of those sort of retro games that you can play every now and again, and yeah, and it follows a lot of similar stuff from previous 2D Zelda games. Like you've got the level up of some of your weapons, like the sword and the power bracelet. You can hold 2 items at a time. So, with one of them, I highly suggest probably your sword, because that's in every single Zelda game. That's the most useful tool you have in your arsenal. So I think having your sword in one of your slots is probably the best, and then having for your secondary item, whatever you have that you might need for a particular puzzle or combat challenge or boss or whatever. So yeah, and now it's time for some gameplay. So for the Oracle games, but because they're on the Game Boy, they're very limited for their time. So the Oracle games are basically graphically the same as, I believe, Link's Awakening, because I think they were both released on the same console, I believe, because I think they were both released on the Game Boy. And just like in the Awakening, Link's Awakening, you can basically just, if you look at the top left-hand corner, so here, you have the use of 2 items. So, and they can be on 2 different buttons. So, B right now is my sword, and for the A button, it's the muscle bracelet. And just like in the Awakening, you can switch between weapons or items and stuff like that. So let's go with shield for now, and now you can see Link now has his shield, which I think is a nice touch to this game, well, to both games in particular, because Link in every other Zelda game is mainly in the 3D games, always has a shield equipped, and you always see it. So it's nice to see that whenever you equip the shield in these kinds of games, you see Link carrying it around, and not just having it always equipped on his person, just like the 3D games. Now, what makes Ages different from Seasons, apart from 2 different names and different locations and stuff, is its main feature, that being you can go back in time. So, and you can only find specific spots in the world. So there's a specific spot, I believe, near Impa's place, I believe, and this takes you back to the distant past. So if I can find the map. So with the map, it looks like it's basically just a sort of very distant past, and it's very very interesting because Ages, it's all about time. You can see different aspects of it. So, for instance, this part of the map is all covered in rocks and marble. But if I go back into the future, which will be shown by this little portal thing, you can see that now all of the rocks has disappeared, and trees and stuff are growing in its place. And also, I want to try and make it. I want to try and go to the tower over there, because if I can make it, because again, like with the whole time travel aspect, hang on, I don't think you can actually see the whole tower, but to basically just to give some some context, if I can just bring up the map here, the tower here in the present, or which we're in now, is built, but in the past it's just beginning to be built and stuff like that. So it's kind of like you have to go back and forth between the two eras and just basically defeat the basically just it's kind of hard to explain really. And yeah, I think with Ages it's really fascinating because of the whole time travel aspect, because this is more on puzzle solving, I believe, and you have to really think, okay, how do I go and get this particular thing, but I'm in the future, so I have to go back into the past to get it, or stuff like that. And yeah, and I think it's really cool of how this game interacts with the whole time and past, present, future thing, is with the tree, if I can get to it. No, it's not this way, it's further ahead. So it's up here. Yeah, it's here. So with the tree in Ages, one of the first things you do is save it in the past. So you go back to the past and save it, and then you open to save it, and then it's still here in the future. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, and now I'm going to show you seasons. So with seasons, it's basically just you going through the different seasons. So spring, summer, autumn, winter. And I do like how at the start of the game, like certain areas are affected by different temperatures or different seasons. So as you just saw, the place I was just in was affected by snow, and I think this is supposed to be summer, I think. And I think if you travel between this particular area and this one, the seasons change. So originally this was summer, and now it's winter. And if I go back again, it'll be autumn, or it's still winter, but we kind of get the idea. So yeah, so basically this game is more, I believe it's more based on action, and yeah, I think that's really interesting, because so now this is, I believe, it's autumn, I believe. So yeah, so it's one of those. So with seasons, it's one of those games that's really interesting, because it's one of those games you don't really see a lot, and because if you look at other Zelda games, they both have both puzzles and action, but with seasons, you don't really you don't really have with both seasons and ages. It's only really focused on one aspect. So yeah, and the dungeons, they're just typical standard dungeons. You fight enemies, you fight bosses, that kind of thing, and yeah, I enjoy the dungeons. I think they're nice. I do enjoy them, and yeah, I think they're fine, because I think with the whole dungeons thing, I think they fit the whole both games really well, because again, puzzle solving with one game, and then action with another. You really have to focus on which one you want to do, and just do the action or puzzle solving. And I think at first it will be confusing, because you have to think, okay, one game's all about action, another game's all about puzzle solving. So yeah, and yeah, that's been it for the gameplay. Now it's time to go back to the review. Now, as I said before in both the gameplay and an earlier part of the review, both all Call of Ages and Seasons focus on one particular aspect, depending on which game you're playing. With Seasons being on the combat, Ages being on the puzzle solving. And I think that's really fascinating, because you don't really see that in a whole lot of Zelda games, because every other Zelda game has both puzzles and combat. And it's the same thing, I feel like with the Orca games. You've got some puzzles here and there, but one game focuses on one particular aspect more than the other. And yeah, there's really fun and interesting to see how you can use one thing over the other. So for Seasons, which is the one I believe that has the combat focus, you have to really think on the enemy patterns and think, okay, I've got to use my combat skills and what I've learned for these enemies. And for Ages, you have to really focus on, okay, I have to do some sort of puzzles, and I've got to figure out, okay, if I have to use one, because for example, in the beginning of the game, when you first meet one of the characters, I think it's the tree. I forgot the name of the tree, but it's the main tree where you have to where you've met it for the first time, and you find out that it's been wiped out from existence, and then you have to go back in time in order to save it. So I think that's a really interesting puzzle because you have to think, okay, it's been erased from time, so to go back to the past in order to save it. And that's a really, I think it's as a first sort of puzzle type of thing. It really helps you set up for the remaining rest of the game. Okay, I have to use my puzzle solving in order to find out how to solve different things around the world. And that's really interesting because, as before, you don't really see a lot of other Zelda games doing this sort of thing. They mainly have both their puzzles and their combat and action parts kind of combined together, whether that's in the dungeons or outside the dungeons or the boss fights, or whatever, and they kind of split them off in both games, which I think is quite cool. And overall, I think the Orca games are really fun and interesting, and I think they have a lot of interesting elements that could be seen in maybe future Zelda games if Nintendo made one or two more games like this, maybe have two games in one, with one being focused on combat, the other one focusing on puzzles, something like that. So yeah, so that's been my review for The Legend of Zelda: Oracle of Ages and Seasons. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.